Lily sat quietly in the corner of her favorite coffee shop, the soft hum of conversation filling the air as she gazed out the window. It was a warm autumn afternoon, and the golden leaves fluttered in the breeze outside, mirroring the flutter of thoughts in her mind. She hadn't seen Rachel in weeks, not since that last long chat they had over brunch. It seemed so unlike them, this distance, this silence between two women who once couldn't imagine a day apart. Lily had always been the kind of woman who believed in deep connections, the kind of friendships that could weather any storm, no matter the distance, the time, or the changes that came with age. And then there was Rachel, her best friend, her confidant, her rock. They had known each other since college, where their friendship had been forged in late-night study sessions, shared dreams, and a mutual understanding that nothing in the world could tear them apart. Rachel had always been the more free-spirited of the two, vivacious, spontaneous, and always the life of the party. She had a way of lighting up any room she entered, drawing people in with her infectious laughter and wild ideas. In contrast, Lily was the more grounded one, thoughtful, reflective, and loyal. Where Rachel was bold and adventurous, Lily was careful and methodical. It was this balance that made their friendship so special, a dance between two different personalities that complemented each other perfectly. Their bond had been tested over the years, through breakups, relocations, and the hustle of adult life, but it had always endured. No matter how busy life got, they always made time for each other. That was the kind of friendship they had. Or so Lily had thought. But recently, things had begun to change, and Lily couldn't quite put her finger on when it had started. It had been after her wedding to James, her husband of 5 years, that she began to notice the subtle shifts. It wasn't anything overt at first, just little things. Rachel no longer called her as often, and when she did, the conversations felt strained. The laughter that used to come so easily between them seemed distant, and there was an odd unspoken tension whenever they saw each other. Lily had convinced herself that it was just the natural ebb and flow of life. After all, Rachel had her own life, her own career, and her own set of challenges. She couldn't expect things to stay the same forever. But still, the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Lily couldn't help but notice how Rachel seemed to be avoiding her, like a shadow that slipped just out of reach. There were moments when Lily would call her, and Rachel would either cancel plans at the last minute or claim she was too busy with work. It was starting to hurt Lily's feelings, and the more she thought about it, the more she began to question whether their friendship had truly weathered the test of time, or if it had simply been a chapter in her life that was beginning to close. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday evening, and Lily had just finished a long day at work. She had been looking forward to a quiet night at home with James, but when she walked in, she was greeted by the smell of burnt dinner. James was standing in the kitchen, holding a burnt pan, looking flustered. "Sorry, I guess I got distracted," he said with a sheepish smile. Lily chuckled, shaking her head. "Distracted by what?" "Just stuff. Work, you know." She gave him a knowing smile, brushing it off as another typical evening in their marriage. But there was something in his eyes that felt off. She couldn't quite place it, but something about his tone made her pause. They ate a simple meal that night, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling that there was a distance between them as well. Later that evening, while James was taking a shower, Lily's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text from Rachel, a quick message that read, "Hey, sorry I missed your call earlier. I've been dealing with some stuff. Let's catch up soon, okay?" Lily felt a strange unease stir inside her as she read the message. It was the same response she had been getting for weeks, and yet something about it felt different. She thought about replying, but instead, she tossed the phone back on the counter, feeling the weight of the unanswered question linger in the air. James finished his shower and came out, his usual warmth and charm returning. They sat on the couch, watching a movie, but Lily's mind wandered back to the text from Rachel. She had to admit, something about their friendship didn't feel the same anymore. As the credits rolled on the movie, Lily glanced at James, who was staring at his phone, completely absorbed in something. It wasn't unusual for him to check his work emails late at night, but tonight, something about the way he was holding his phone felt off. Almost as if he were hiding something. That night, as Lily lay in bed, her thoughts swirled around in a haze. She loved James. She trusted him. But why did she feel so unsettled? Why did she feel like she was losing both him and Rachel? Her heart ached at the thought of her two closest people slipping away from her, and the loneliness crept in. She longed to reach out to Rachel, to ask her what was really going on, but a part of her was afraid. afraid that asking the question would lead her to an answer she didn't want to hear. And so she closed her eyes, hoping that the answers would come in time, and trying to push away the creeping suspicion that something more was at play, something that threatened to unravel the life she had so carefully built. Lily sat alone in the living room, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall the only sound that seemed to fill the quiet house. The days had passed since that unsettling night, and the heaviness in her chest hadn't lifted. If anything, it had grown stronger. Her relationship with James had begun to feel like a shadow of what it once was, distant and cold, and Rachel, well, Rachel felt even farther away. The little text messages, the missed calls, the quick "I'm busy" responses, each one felt like a tiny cut, not enough to leave a visible mark, but collectively, they had begun to bleed. Lily was no longer certain if she was imagining things or if something truly was wrong. She had always trusted her instincts, but now she found herself second-guessing every thought. It was a Tuesday when the first true crack in the facade appeared. Lily had just finished an afternoon meeting at work when she noticed her phone buzzing with multiple messages. She hesitated before looking at the screen, her stomach tightening with an inexplicable anxiety. It was Rachel again, her name lighting up the phone in bright, familiar letters. This time there was no "sorry I missed your call" or "I've been dealing with stuff." Instead, Rachel had sent her a simple message: "Can we talk? It's urgent." Lily's heart raced. Rachel had always been a free spirit, full of energy and surprises, but never had she texted Lily like this, so direct, so urgent. 1,000 thoughts flooded Lily's mind as she stared at the phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. She wanted to respond immediately, but part of her hesitated. It wasn't the urgency of Rachel's message that made her pause, but the growing sense of disconnection she had felt between them. What if Rachel was pulling away for a reason? What if this was the moment she had been dreading, the moment that would finally unravel the friendship they had spent years building? Finally, after a few moments of uncertainty, Lily typed out a quick response: "Of course, what's going on?" The reply came almost immediately. "Can I come over tonight?" Lily's mind raced. Rachel was coming over? She hadn't visited in weeks, and their last few interactions had felt like nothing more than polite exchanges, disconnected and strained. Lily felt a pang of fear and curiosity at the same time, unsure of what Rachel wanted to say. That evening, as the clock struck 7, there was a knock at the door. Lily stood up from the couch, her heart pounding in her chest. She opened the door to find Rachel standing on the other side, her face a mixture of anxiety and determination. "Hey," Rachel said quietly, stepping inside. Her voice was softer than usual, almost hesitant. Lily closed the door behind her and gestured for Rachel to sit. She felt an odd sense of déjà vu, as though this moment had been building for a long time. "So what's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Rachel took a deep breath before speaking, her eyes briefly flicking to the floor before meeting Lily's gaze. "Lily, I've been meaning to talk to you for a while. I've been so distracted, and I don't know how to say this, but I think I've been pulling away from you lately. And I feel terrible about it." Lily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "What do you mean pulling away? Is it about work or something else?" She tried to keep her tone neutral, though inside, her pulse quickened. Rachel hesitated for a long moment, the silence hanging heavily between them. "It's not just work, Lily," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's about us. Our friendship. I think I've made some mistakes, and I don't know how to fix them." Lily's mind raced, her thoughts spinning in circles. "Rachel, what are you talking about?" Her voice shook slightly, though she tried to mask the anxiety creeping in. "You're scaring me." Rachel met her gaze, her eyes full of emotion. "Lily, I don't know how to explain this, but it's not just that I've been distant. It's something more." She paused, as though searching for the right words. "I've been feeling something for James. Something I shouldn't have felt. And I don't know what to do about it." Lily's world seemed to stop in that moment. The words Rachel had just spoken echoed in her mind, but they didn't make sense. "What do you mean, something for James?" Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. Rachel's face flushed, and her lips trembled. "I think you know what I'm saying. I never meant for it to happen, Lily. But the feelings just developed. I don't know how or when, but I'm sorry. I truly am." Lily sat frozen, her heart beating painfully in her chest. The room around her felt as though it were closing in. She had suspected something was wrong, but hearing the words come from Rachel's mouth made it all too real. Her best friend, her closest confidant, was confessing to a betrayal that felt like a nightmare. The silence in the room was deafening, the weight of Rachel's words hanging heavy in the air. Lily's mind raced, but she couldn't find the right words to speak. All she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat, thumping loudly in her ears. Rachel sat across from her, her eyes filled with guilt. "Lily, I didn't want this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I know I've ruined everything, and I don't expect you to forgive me. Rachel broke off, tears filling her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you." Lily finally found her voice, though it trembled with a mixture of disbelief and pain. "How could you do this to me, Rachel?" she whispered. "You were supposed to be my best friend. My sister. How could you betray me like this?" Rachel's shoulders sagged as she sobbed, unable to answer the question that Lily had asked. Lily's heart felt like it was breaking, but beneath the hurt was something else, a deep, burning anger. How could the woman who had stood by her through thick and thin be the same person who had betrayed her in the most intimate way possible? And how could James, the man she had trusted with her heart, have allowed this to happen? Lily stood up abruptly, her emotions overwhelming her. "I need to think. I can't deal with this right now." Rachel reached out a hand, but Lily stepped back. "Please, leave. I can't even look at you right now." Without a word, Rachel stood up and walked towards the door. Before leaving, she turned to look at Lily one last time. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I truly am." Lily didn't say anything as she watched Rachel leave. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a moment, Lily just stood there, staring at the space where her best friend had been. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on her like a suffocating blanket. As she sat down on the couch, the tears finally came. She cried not just for the friendship that had been shattered, but for the life she thought she had, one that had been built on trust and love. She cried for the woman who had believed that nothing could break her heart, only to realize that the deepest cuts came from those she loved most. Lily sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where Rachel had just stood moments before. The air felt thick, and the silence was unbearable. The tears that had flowed freely now seemed to dry up, replaced by a cold numbness that took root in her chest. She had expected many things from Rachel, but this betrayal, was something she had never anticipated. It felt as if everything in her life was slowly slipping through her fingers. Her marriage, once filled with warmth and laughter, now seemed distant and fractured. And her friendship with Rachel, the one bond that had stood the test of time, was now shattered beyond repair. Lily didn't know how long she sat there, lost in thought, her mind replaying the words Rachel had said over and over again. "I've been feeling something for James." The phrase echoed in her ears, drowning out every other sound. How could Rachel, her best friend, the woman who had stood by her side for years, cross that line? How could she betray her in such an intimate way? She stood up abruptly, needing to move, needing to do something to clear her mind. The walls of the house, once comforting and familiar, now felt suffocating. She needed space to breathe, to think, to process what had just happened. She grabbed her coat and stepped outside, the cool night air biting at her skin as she made her way down the sidewalk. Her feet carried her without purpose, her mind too clouded with confusion and anger to think clearly. The familiar streets of their neighborhood, once a source of comfort, now felt alien to her. As she walked, she tried to think back to when it all started. When had Rachel's feelings for James begun? How had it escalated to this point? Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, but no answers seemed to come. Was it something she had missed? Had there been signs, clues that she had ignored in her blind trust? Lily felt sick to her stomach at the thought that she might have missed something so obvious, something that could have saved her from this heartache. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of her phone buzzing in her pocket. It was a text message from James. "James, Lily, we need to talk. I'm sorry for everything. I don't know what happened, but I need you to understand." Lily stopped walking and stood frozen, her hand trembling as she stared at the screen. The words seemed like a poor attempt at justification, an empty apology that meant nothing. She had trusted James with everything, her heart, her dreams, her future, and now it felt like he had taken all of it and thrown it away. She couldn't respond. Not now. Not when everything inside her was screaming at her to run far, far away from both of them. But she knew she couldn't escape the reality of what had happened. It was too raw, too painful. Instead of replying, she pocketed her phone and continued walking, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on her with every step. She didn't know how to face James. How could she? He had slept with Rachel, her closest friend. He had allowed this to happen, and now he wanted to apologize? It felt like a slap in the face. By the time Lily returned home, the night had deepened, and a heavy fog had settled over the city. She didn't bother to take off her coat as she collapsed onto the couch, her mind still reeling. The weight of the world seemed to be pressing down on her chest, and she couldn't breathe. She didn't want to think about Rachel. She didn't want to think about James. But no matter how hard she tried to escape the thoughts, they were there, relentless and unforgiving. Her phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. This time, it was a call from James. She hesitated, staring at the screen, and for a moment, she considered ignoring it. But then, something inside her broke. She had to know. She needed to hear it from him, needed to understand how everything had spiraled so completely out of control. Lily took a deep breath and answered the phone. "Lily," James said, his voice filled with tension. "Please, just listen to me. I know I've messed up, but I need you to know that I never meant for this to happen." She closed her eyes, feeling a lump form in her throat. "How could you, James? How could you betray me like this?" Her voice was shaking, but there was no stopping the flood of emotions pouring out. "I don't know," he replied, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I don't have an excuse. I wasn't thinking. I never meant for it to go this far." Lily squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the pain. "You never meant for it to go this far," she repeated, her voice rising. "And what? It just happened. You let it happen, James. You let her into our lives, into our marriage. She couldn't finish the sentence. The words lodged in her throat like shards of glass. "I know," he whispered. "I know I messed up. I'm not asking you to forgive me, but I need you to know that this was the biggest mistake of my life." Lily wanted to scream at him. She wanted to tell him that it was too late for apologies, too late for excuses. But all she could do was sit there, her heart in pieces, feeling utterly betrayed. "You should have thought about that before you slept with her," she said quietly, her voice cold with anger and hurt. "Don't call me again, James. I can't talk to you right now." She hung up before he could say anything else, and for a long time, she sat in silence, staring at the empty walls around her. Everything felt hollow, like she was living in a world that no longer made sense. Lily didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to move forward from this, how to rebuild a life that had been so completely shattered. All she knew was that she couldn't stay in this house, in this life, pretending everything was fine. The betrayal ran deep, not just from James, but from Rachel too. How could she face either of them again? How could she trust anyone after this? But as the night wore on, Lily's thoughts began to shift. She realized that it wasn't about James or Rachel anymore. It wasn't even about the pain they had caused her. It was about her. It was about finding a way to heal, to rebuild, and to rediscover who she was outside of the life she had shared with them. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't going to let this define her. She was stronger than this, and no matter how hard it got, she would find a way to move forward. It was time to take control. It was time to let go. The days that followed felt like a blur to Lily. The emotions from the night Rachel had confessed her betrayal were still raw, but something inside her was beginning to shift. The sadness, the disbelief, the shock, they hadn't disappeared, but they were no longer all-consuming. Slowly, an unexpected sense of clarity started to emerge, as though the fog was lifting, revealing a path she hadn't seen before. Lily found herself moving through her days in a haze, going through the motions at work, interacting with colleagues, and maintaining a facade of normalcy, but inside, she was torn apart. The thoughts of Rachel and James, the two people who had meant the most to her, were always there, lurking just beneath the surface. Yet, as the days passed, she found herself questioning one thing above all: what now? She had spent years building a life with James, and she had trusted Rachel like a sister. Their betrayal was a wound deeper than anything she had ever known, but if there was one thing Lily had learned over the past few days, it was that she could not remain stuck in the hurt. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about her. Lily spent hours in the quiet of her home, contemplating her next steps. The house that once felt so full of love now felt empty and cold. She needed space, time, and a change. She had to get away from it all, to think, to breathe, to reclaim her own sense of self. The idea of going to the small cabin she and James had bought years ago seemed like the perfect solution. It was isolated, peaceful, and it had always been her sanctuary when she needed to escape the noise of the world. She could already picture it, the crisp air, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the calmness of the lake that stretched out before her. It was exactly what she needed to clear her mind and find the answers she had been searching for. Without hesitation, she packed a bag, grabbed her car keys, and left. She couldn't bear to stay another minute in that house, surrounded by the memories of the life she had once shared with James. The house that no longer felt like home. The drive to the cabin was long, but Lily didn't mind. It gave her time to think, or rather not think. Her mind raced with memories and what-ifs, each one more painful than the last. She thought about the woman who had once been her best friend, the woman she had shared her deepest secrets with. And then she thought about James, the man who had promised to love her forever, but had broken that promise in the most intimate way possible. She arrived at the cabin just as the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the lake. The familiar surroundings brought her a sense of peace, but it was fleeting. She stood there for a long moment, just taking in the beauty of the place, before walking inside. The cabin was cozy, with wooden beams and large windows that looked out over the water. Everything was the same as it had always been, but Lily felt different. The life she had once known was slipping away, and she wasn't sure how to hold on to it. She unpacked her things and made herself a cup of tea, sitting by the window as the sky turned dark. The solitude of the cabin was both comforting and suffocating. It was exactly what she had needed, but now in the silence, her thoughts returned to Rachel and James, to the betrayal that still felt too fresh to process. That night, Lily didn't sleep much. The questions in her mind ran on a loop, playing over and over again. How could Rachel betray her like that? How could James, the man she loved, let this happen? And most importantly, why had it happened? But as the hours passed and the world outside grew quieter, Lily found herself asking a different question: what was next for me? She had been so consumed by the pain of what had happened, by the anger and sadness, that she had never allowed herself to consider the possibility of moving forward. But as she sat there, in the stillness of the cabin, something within her began to shift. Lily wasn't going to let this define her. She wasn't going to allow Rachel and James to take away the person she was, the woman she had worked so hard to become. She had always been strong, and she needed to remind herself of that. The next morning, Lily woke up early, as the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees. She made herself a quiet breakfast, taking in the serene beauty of the place. The decision had been made. It was time to take back her life. Lily spent the next few days at the cabin, allowing herself the space to heal and reflect. She didn't call Rachel, and she didn't answer James's calls. It wasn't that she didn't want to hear from them, it was just that, for the first time in a long while, Lily needed to be alone. She needed to reconnect with herself. On the third day, she took a long walk by the lake, her feet crunching in the gravel path as the breeze ruffled her hair. The sound of the water lapping at the shore was soothing, and for the first time in days, Lily felt a sense of calm. That afternoon, she sat by the fire pit outside, journaling her thoughts. She wrote about the hurt, the betrayal, and the anger she felt, but she also wrote about the strength she had discovered within herself. She had loved deeply, and she had been hurt deeply, but she had also survived. She was still standing. And that, she realized, was the first step toward healing. As she wrote, she also realized that she couldn't stay angry forever. It was tempting to hold on to that anger, to let it fuel her every action, but Lily knew deep down that anger would only keep her tied to Rachel and James. It would keep her stuck in the past, in the hurt. And that wasn't the woman she wanted to be. Lily made a decision that day. She wasn't going to forgive them, not yet at least, but she was going to let go of the anger. She was going to move forward. And maybe, just maybe, she would find peace again. That evening, as the sun set over the lake, Lily stood up and took a deep breath. She felt the weight of the past few days, but there was also a sense of relief. It wasn't the relief of forgetting, it was the relief of letting go. She wasn't defined by their betrayal. She wasn't defined by the pain. She was defined by her strength. And no matter what came next, Lily knew that she would find a way to be whole again. Lily woke up early the next morning, the the light of dawn casting a soft glow through the windows of the cabin. The days since her arrival had been peaceful, but the quiet wasn't without its challenges. The solitude had allowed her time to process everything, time to think, reflect, and let the pain begin to soften. But the weight of the betrayal still lingered in her chest, a reminder of the love she had lost, the trust she had given, and the wounds that had yet to fully heal. She stretched her arms above her head, taking in the calm beauty of the cabin's surroundings. The chirping of birds, the rustling of the trees, and the soft lapping of water against the shore, everything was serene. It was what she had come here for, peace. Yet, no matter how still the world around her was, the storm inside her heart was harder to quiet. Lily had spent the past few days focusing on herself, going on long walks by the lake, journaling, and reading books she hadn't had time to finish. But now, as the sunlight filtered in through the window, she realized she was no longer running from the reality of what had happened. She wasn't avoiding the pain, the anger, or the confusion. She had faced them head-on, and now it was time to move forward. Her phone had stayed silent for days. James had stopped calling. Rachel's texts had slowed to nothing, and Lily hadn't reached out to either of them. The silence between them felt heavy, suffocating, but she knew it was necessary. She wasn't ready to face them, not yet. But Lily knew that eventually, she would have to make a decision. The anger she had carried with her for so long was slowly fading, and with it came the realization that the only person who could truly heal her was herself. Later that afternoon, Lily decided to take one last walk around the cabin, this time with the intention of finding closure. She didn't know exactly what that meant, but as she walked, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for this place, this sanctuary that had given her the time and space to breathe. She thought about all the years she had spent with James, the promises they had made to each other, the dreams they had shared. She thought about Rachel, the woman who had once been her closest friend, her confidant. The woman who had destroyed it all. But the more she walked, the more she realized something important. She couldn't change what had happened. She couldn't undo the betrayal. She couldn't rewind time and unsee the things that had broken her heart. But what she could do was choose how to move forward. And moving forward meant letting go. Lily stopped by the edge of the lake, staring out at the calm waters. The world seemed so still, so perfect, and for a moment, she allowed herself to simply be. There was a stillness in her heart now, a quiet acceptance. She wasn't going to let Rachel and James define her any longer. Their actions had hurt her, yes, but they no longer had power over her. She had spent so long letting the anger take control, letting it fuel her, letting it guide her actions. But now, she knew it was time to release it. It wasn't about forgiving them, not yet. It was about forgiving herself, for allowing herself to be hurt, for letting their betrayal weigh on her for so long. Lily closed her eyes, letting the breeze wash over her, and for the first time in weeks, she felt peace. The next morning, Lily packed up her things, ready to return to the city. The cabin had served its purpose. It had given her the time she needed to clear her head, to find some semblance of peace, and to begin the healing process. But it was time to face the world again, to confront the reality that awaited her back home. As she drove back to the city, she couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. Her thoughts drifted to James and Rachel. Would she ever be able to face them again? Could she ever trust them? The answers to those questions were unclear, but one thing was certain: she wasn't going to let them destroy her. The pain of their betrayal would always be a part of her, but it wouldn't define her. She would find a way to move on, one step at a time. And when the time came, when she was ready, she would confront them. But today was not that day. She reached her apartment in the early evening, exhausted but determined. As she stepped inside, the familiar surroundings greeted her, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel suffocated. The silence in the apartment wasn't empty, it was filled with possibility. It was her space, and it was time for her to reclaim it. A few days later, Lily received a text from Rachel. "Rachel, Lily, I know you're angry. And I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say something. I'm truly sorry for what I've done. You were my best friend, and I never should have betrayed your trust. Please know that I deeply regret my actions, and I'll always be here if you ever want to talk." Lily stared at the screen, her heart heavy with mixed emotions. The anger she had once felt toward Rachel had faded, replaced by a deep sadness. Rachel's apology wasn't enough to undo the damage, but Lily knew that forgiveness wasn't something she could offer right now. Not yet. Instead, she took a deep breath and typed a reply. "Lily, I'm not ready to talk yet, Rachel. But I need you to understand that I'm hurt. Deeply. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, but for now, I need space. I hope you understand. She hit send, her fingers trembling slightly. She didn't expect Rachel to reply right away. The healing process was going to take time, and Lily wasn't going to rush it. That night, as Lily sat on her couch, staring out the window at the city lights, she felt a sense of calm settle over her. She had made the decision to move forward, and while the journey wasn't going to be easy, she was ready to take it one step at a time. She had learned that she couldn't control other people's actions. She couldn't control the past. But she could control her future. And that was enough. Lily had spent weeks moving through the motions, her heart still tender from the betrayal, but her mind clearer now, her steps lighter. The city around her buzzed with its usual energy, people rushing to and fro, the constant hum of traffic, the chatter of everyday life, but Lily no longer felt swept up in it all. For the first time in a long while, she felt grounded. The decision she had made to let go had given her a sense of peace, but it was not without its challenges. There were moments of doubt, moments when the hurt would creep back in like an old familiar friend, threatening to overwhelm her. But each time, she reminded herself that healing was not a linear process. It was messy, unpredictable, but it was hers to navigate. She was taking control of her own life, of her own narrative, and she was determined not to let the actions of Rachel and James dictate her happiness. Lily had not heard from Rachel in a week after sending her the text. Her phone had stayed quiet, and in some ways, that silence was both a relief and a burden. She knew Rachel was respecting her space, but there was still an underlying tension, a question that loomed large in her mind. Would their friendship ever be the same again? Could she ever trust Rachel, or James for that matter, in the same way? But rather than dwelling on the uncertainty, Lily focused on what she could control. She threw herself into her work, rediscovering a passion for her career that she hadn't realized she had lost. The energy she once spent on worrying about her relationships was now channeled into her personal growth. She enrolled in a leadership course she had been considering for months, dedicated herself to projects she had put on hold, and even started painting again, something she hadn't done since before her marriage. Art had always been her outlet, a way to express what words couldn't. One evening, as she sat in her living room with a glass of wine, a knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She glanced at the clock, 9 p.m. It was late for a visit. Her heart skipped a beat, and for a split second, she wondered if it was James, but quickly dismissed the thought. He had given her space, respecting her wishes. She wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find Rachel standing on the other side, her expression soft, almost hesitant. She was holding a small bouquet of flowers, her eyes filled with regret and emotion. "Lily," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've already apologized, but I didn't feel right just leaving it there. I wanted to come and say it to you in person." Lily felt a wave of conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, but also something softer. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself before responding. "Rachel, I don't know if I'm ready to talk to you like this," Lily said, her voice steady, but there was a crack in it that she couldn't hide. "But I appreciate you coming." Rachel nodded, stepping forward slightly. "I understand. I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I just wanted you to know how truly sorry I am. I've been lost without you, Lily. You were my best friend, and I let everything get in the way of that." Lily swallowed hard, her emotions swirling. The betrayal was still fresh, the hurt still raw, but as she looked at Rachel, her once best friend, she couldn't help but remember the years of laughter, support, and memories they had shared. "Rachel," Lily began slowly, her voice thick with emotion, "I don't know what to say. The pain, it's still there. I don't know if I can ever forget what happened. What you did. It feels like it broke something inside me." Rachel's eyes filled with tears, and she stepped closer, offering the bouquet to Lily. "I know. And I understand if you can't forgive me now. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I'll be here when you're ready." Lily stood in silence for a moment, the weight of Rachel's words settling into her chest. The woman who had hurt her so deeply was still standing here, vulnerable, asking for forgiveness. And for the first time, Lily realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about her. It was about releasing the hold that anger and betrayal had on her, and freeing herself from the grip of the past. She looked at Rachel, and something inside her shifted. It wasn't that she had completely let go of the hurt, no, that would take time, but Lily recognized that she didn't want to carry the weight of resentment any longer. The decision to forgive, to move forward, was hers to make. And while it wouldn't happen overnight, she knew that she was ready to take the first step. Lily reached out and took the flowers from Rachel, a small tentative smile forming on her lips. "Thank you for coming. I need time, Rachel. But I'm willing to try. For us." Rachel's face brightened with a mixture of relief and gratitude, but there was still a sadness in her eyes. "I understand. Thank you, Lily. That's all I can ask for." With that, Rachel gave her a final heartfelt look before turning to leave. Lily watched her go, her heart heavy but lighter than it had been in weeks. She closed the door softly behind her and stood there for a moment, absorbing the silence. It wasn't the end of their story, but it was the beginning of something new. A new chapter. One where forgiveness, though hard, was the first step toward healing. One where Lily would continue to reclaim her life, step by painful step, but this time with a sense of peace that she had never known before. A few days later, as Lily sat down at her kitchen table, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from James. "James, Lily, I know this message might be unwelcome, but I need to say this. I've been reflecting a lot on what happened between us, and I realize how much I've hurt you. I can't expect anything from you, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I was wrong. I hope, in time, we can talk about everything. But only when you're ready." Lily read the message several times, the words sinking deep into her heart. She didn't know what the future held, or if she would ever be able to trust James again, but she wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't consumed by the bitterness that had once threatened to overtake her. She wasn't ready to talk to him, not yet, but for the first time, she didn't feel trapped by the weight of the past. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and placed the phone down gently. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: she was ready to take it. On her terms. Lily sat in her favorite cafe, staring out the window at the bustling city streets. The energy of the world outside felt distant, like she was watching everything from behind a veil. Life continued to move at its usual frenetic pace, but for the first time in months, Lily felt as though she was standing still, finding her place in the chaos. It had been weeks since her conversation with Rachel, and while things were far from being normal, the heavy weight of betrayal had begun to lift. Forgiveness had not been easy, but it had been necessary. She had decided to let go of the past, not because what happened didn't matter, but because she wanted to be free. Free of the anger. Free of the resentment. Free of the bitterness that had consumed her for so long. Rachel had been patient, giving her the space she needed, but Lily hadn't reached out again. There was still so much to process. Healing wasn't linear. There were days when Lily felt like herself again, when she could smile without it feeling forced, when she could enjoy life without the shadow of betrayal hovering over her. And then there were moments when the memories came rushing back, the pain, the tears, the sense of betrayal, and it felt as though she were back at square one. But through it all, one thing was certain: she was changing. And she liked who she was becoming. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a text from James. "James, Lily, I'm still here, whenever you're ready to talk. I understand if you need more time. But I hope you know I regret everything. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. I miss you." Lily stared at the screen, her heart tightening. She hadn't replied to James since the night she left their home, and part of her wasn't sure she ever would. She wasn't angry at him anymore. But she wasn't ready to forgive him. Not yet. He had broken her trust in a way that words could never repair, and though time had softened the sharp edges of her anger, the wound remained. She had spent years building a life with him, sharing dreams, hopes, and promises. And now, that life felt like a distant memory, one that she wasn't sure she wanted to revisit. She set her phone down, taking a deep breath. The healing she had been doing wasn't about him or Rachel anymore, it was about her. And the truth was, Lily didn't need either of them to be whole. She had spent too much of her life giving pieces of herself away, and now, she was learning to give those pieces back to herself. The following weekend, Lily found herself at a crossroads. The space she had created for herself was beautiful, but it felt lonely. Her friends had been supportive, but none of them truly understood the complexity of what she was going through. Rachel's absence was heavy, and while Lily had decided to forgive her, there was still a sense of loss. She had been part of her life for so long, and now, that chapter felt irrevocably closed. But this new chapter was hers to write. Lily stood in front of her mirror that Saturday morning, applying a little makeup. She hadn't felt the urge to take care of herself in this way for a long time, but today was different. Today, she was doing it for herself. Her reflection smiled back at her, a woman who had endured pain, faced it head-on, and was now reclaiming her life. She had always prided herself on being strong, but it was only now, after everything she had been through, that she realized the true meaning of strength. She was no longer defined by the mistakes of the past. She was no longer held captive by the actions of others. She was her own person, and she was ready to embrace everything that came with that. After finishing her makeup, she slipped on a dress she had bought months ago, never daring to wear it because she felt she didn't deserve to look good for herself. But today was different. Today, she was embracing her worth. She was stepping into her own power. Lily decided to take a walk through the park later that afternoon. She was beginning to enjoy the stillness, the space that allowed her to think without distractions. As she wandered through the familiar trails, she found herself reflecting on how far she had come. And then, unexpectedly, her phone rang. She hesitated, not recognizing the number, but answered anyway. "Hello. Lily, it's me, Rachel." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected to hear from her so soon after their last meeting. She had thought Rachel might give her more time, but here she was, reaching out again. "Hi Rachel," Lily said, her voice steady but unsure. "What's up? I know we've barely spoken since I came to see you, and I completely respect your space. But I wanted to let you know that I've been doing a lot of thinking too. About everything. About our friendship. And I've realized something." Lily listened, her emotions a mix of curiosity and caution. "I don't want you to think I'm pushing, but I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right between us, even if it takes time. I know I can't undo the past, but I want to rebuild our friendship, if you'll let me." Lily felt a tightness in her chest. She wasn't ready to jump back into a friendship with Rachel, but hearing those words, hearing Rachel take responsibility for her actions, was a step in the right direction. "I appreciate that, Rachel," Lily said, her voice softer now. "I really do. But right now, I need to focus on myself. I'm not saying no, but I'm not ready yet." "I understand," Rachel replied, her voice full of understanding and sincerity. "Take all the time you need, Lily. Just know that I'm here when you're ready." Lily felt a surge of gratitude. Maybe their friendship could be rebuilt. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but she wasn't willing to completely close the door on it just yet. As the conversation ended, Lily set her phone down, a quiet sense of peace filling her heart. She wasn't ready to forgive Rachel completely, but she could start to see a path forward, one where forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it meant healing. Later that night, as Lily settled into bed, she thought about the future. There was still so much work to be done, so much healing left to go through, but for the first time in months, she felt hopeful. The road ahead wasn't easy, but she knew she had the strength to walk it. She had taken back her life. She had taken back her power. And whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms. Lily woke up to the sound of rain tapping gently against her window, a rhythmic melody that felt soothing to her restless heart. The past few months had been a journey, one of pain, forgiveness, and self-discovery. As she lay in bed, watching the dark clouds roll across the sky, she reflected on how far she had come since that day at the cabin when she first realized that forgiveness was not for the other person, but for herself. She had let go of so much, and with each passing day, it felt like she was shedding layers of hurt, anger, and regret. The woman she had been when she first discovered Rachel's betrayal felt like a stranger now, a woman bound by the chains of her past. But Lily wasn't that woman anymore. She had been reborn, stronger, and more resilient than ever before. The rain seemed to wash away the last remnants of her old self, leaving only the woman she was becoming, free, independent, and unapologetically her own. She no longer relied on anyone else to define her worth, and that realization had been both empowering and humbling. Lily had been back in the city for a few weeks now, settling into a new routine. She had thrown herself into work and had even started volunteering at a local art center, something she had always wanted to do but had put off for too long. The time away had given her the opportunity to reconnect with herself, but now it was time to reconnect with the world around her. The more she immersed herself in her own healing, the more she realized that there was so much to life beyond her past. She had spent years building her life around people who, in the end, had let her down, but now she was ready to build something for herself, a life that was hers alone, free from the shadows of betrayal. One rainy afternoon, as Lily sat in a cafe with a cup of tea, scrolling through her phone, she saw a message from an unexpected source. It was from James. James, Lily, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize how much I hurt you. I'm not asking for anything, but I'd really like to talk if you're willing. I've changed, and I'm sorry for everything. Whenever you're ready, I'll be here. Lily stared at the message for a long time, her fingers hovering over the screen. She wasn't sure what she expected when she'd opened it, but she certainly hadn't expected this. She had worked so hard to move on from James, to free herself from the weight of their past, but now, his words opened the door to a question she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Could she talk to him? Could she hear him out without falling back into the cycle of hurt? And more importantly, did she want to? The truth was, she had spent so much time healing, learning to be whole without him, that she wasn't sure if there was a place for him in her life anymore. But there was one thing she was certain of: she had no intention of returning to the past. She had already forgiven him, not for him, but for her own peace of mind. But that didn't mean they could pick up where they left off. Lily took a deep breath, her fingers finally typing a response. Lily, James, I appreciate your message, and I'm glad you've taken the time to reflect. I'm not ready to talk yet. Maybe one day, but not right now. I need to keep moving forward. She hit send, her heart strangely calm despite the heaviness of the words. It was the right response, honest, kind but firm. She wasn't going to let James back into her life on his terms. She had learned that much. Later that evening, as Lily sat on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker below, she thought about the message. She wasn't angry anymore, but there was still a sadness that lingered. Not for what could have been, but for what had been lost. The relationship with James, the friendship with Rachel, they were both parts of her past that she had learned to accept, but not to resurrect. As the night grew darker, Lily stood up and walked back inside, her mind clearer than it had been in months. She had come so far, and now, it was time to let go of the past completely. There was no more room for regret, for dwelling on what couldn't be fixed. It was time to embrace the future she was building on her own terms. A few weeks later, Lily was sitting in a cozy restaurant with a new friend, Emma, a woman she had met through her volunteer work. They were talking about their favorite books, laughing over stories of their childhoods, and sharing dreams for the future. It felt good, so good, to have someone who was just there. No baggage. No expectations. Lily smiled as Emma told a funny story about her latest misadventures in the art world. It was the first time in a long time that Lily had truly felt light, as though the weight of everything she had been through had finally fallen away. As they finished their meal, Emma turned to her. Lily, you've been through so much, haven't you? Lily paused for a moment, considering the question. I have, she said softly. But I'm not defined by it anymore. I used to think that everything that happened to me would dictate who I was. But now? Now I know that who I am is my choice. Emma smiled, her eyes bright with understanding. That's exactly it. We can't change the past, but we can choose how we live in the present and what we make of the future. You're doing great. Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was carrying a heavy burden. She was lighter. Free. Months passed, and life slowly but surely moved on. Lily had taken back control of her own story. She was no longer defined by the betrayal of those she had loved. Instead, she was creating a new life, a life that was hers and hers alone. There were still difficult days when the memories of the past would resurface, but Lily had learned how to handle them. She had learned how to be kind to herself, to forgive herself. She had learned to love herself. And as she sat on her balcony one evening, watching the sunset over the city, she realized that the horizon before her was full of possibilities. New opportunities. New beginnings. And for the first time in years, she was ready to embrace them all.